listening to the Live, Live, Play podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to the Live, Live, Play podcast. We are back for season 2 and we are doing seasons now. And my first guest is a former guest from an older podcast, and it is Niall Munnelly Counselling. He was a gym owner, now he's in counselling. And today we're going to discuss the fallout for teens and the impacts and the positives and the positives and negatives of what COVID has been doing to people. So Niall, I really appreciate you jumping on the call.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Always appreciate the invite and also the conversation we have and talking to you.
And since we spoke last time, you are a new father.
I am, yes. Yeah, I am, yeah.
And I just became a dad again. And I know it looks like I look very young, but the tiredness is in there, isn't it?
yeah. I know. It's funny how we're both feeling the same at the moment, whatever. But look, it's been an absolute kind of life changer for me, you know.
Big time, yeah.
But the sleepless nights and everything that kind of comes with it, whatever, is just kind of minor compared to kind of the love and what my daughter brings to our lives, like, you know.
Yeah, that little hug or the cuddle, as soothing I get given out to for just having her here, and I'll have her there for 2-3 hours, and I won't move. Yeah. She thinks I'm trying just not to do any work in the house, but my daughter and
yeah, no, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. Even like she's starting to smile now, and
cool, yeah.
To be more cognitive and kind of understand kind of what's going on and making eye contact and kind of, you know, so it's little changes. Even though I'm saying little changes, but they're actually kind of big changes. Like, you know, like week by week, you even see physical changes. But look, it's an absolute blessing, and we're absolutely grateful for.
How old is she now?
She's coming up to 3 months. Well, she's 10. It'll be 11 weeks tomorrow.
Okay, yeah. It's mad, isn't it? It's just, I know people say this, but I never got it when people talk about babies. I had no interest in babies, to be honest, or kids. Until you have your own, you just don't get it. I don't think you can get it. There's that, like, you can be like tired and you're up and they're crying and all the things you have to do for them, but then they look at you and you're like, your heart melts.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a difference between having a boy and having a girl for me.
Is there? Well, I
can already feel I'm done. I'm doomed. I'm doomed to be just one of those, yes, dear, yes, darling, whatever you want.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely, look, it's amazing. Like as a first-time father, I never understood that either as well, and I never had that feeling. Like I'm 40 years of age this year, whatever. So, it's for me, it's just been an absolute blessing, like, you know, and something I think that got us through helped us get us through the pandemic and whatnot. Like, you know, it's kind of it's just been incredible. Like.
It's definitely a roller coaster, and it only gets better and more stress. You know, well, we'll start the show in a second. But one of the things that I noticed is that I always said to Susan, I said I'd love to have Jody as a baby for like 2 hours just to give him the cuddles. But then when he's growing, the things I can do with him and the things I can teach him is a whole. It's just like an evolution of an amazing time with that one person.
Yeah.
So yeah, I honestly, like, yeah, if I met myself 10 years ago, like, you're talking shy, I'm not having kids.
Yeah. How life changes, huh?
Oh, big time. Yeah, it's crazy. But we're not. The show isn't about babies. Maybe that could be for another show.
Yeah.
Parents, the dad show. But we're going to be talking about, obviously, teenagers and youth specifically. I suppose it'll be touched for everyone. But obviously over the last 12 months, it's been a roller coaster, but I kind of feel kids might have been able to get away with it a little bit more. Adults can kind of function better. I think teens, because they're going through so much, the impact of COVID has probably affected them more. Have you found teens and people in general coping with this? Like, how have you found that, or what have you been seeing in regards to youths?
Coping. I think since the restrictions of the pandemic, I think it's been felt across the board. For teenagers, I think the restrictions have meant months of virtual learning, more times isolated from friends, and even the cancellation of important and social activities like sports, school performances, and even graduations for some children or whatever, you know. So I think collectively we've all struggled in some way. Some have found ways to accept what's going on, and others unfortunately have been so consumed by it, it's contaminated their lives and maybe even their families' lives, you know. There was a study done in America, and I think it'd be probably pretty similar in Ireland, but there was a study done with 1,000 parents of teenagers between 13 and 18 years of age, and the results suggest that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 5 teen boys have experienced new or worsened anxiety since March of 2020. You know, so the pandemic has forced teens to be removed from normal social and physical and educational, interactions. And for some teens, these years are the most pivotal time in their lives. You know, even hormonally, there's a lot of changes kids and teens are having to deal with, and then having to be isolated in a house and not being able to express that through friendships and sports. You know, it's I think it's just been incredibly difficult. I've done 3 talks in through Zooms in schools around Kildare. I've done 1 talk in a college in Dublin, and a handful more have been cancelled because they wanted to do them in person. So I didn't get to talk to many teens or adolescents or adults really, except the people I'm working with. But from what I gather, you know, the consensus is that, you know, a lot of people are struggling.
Yeah, and I seen, while I was listening to, it was on the radio, and they were talking about, it was affecting kids that were going from 6th class into 1st year, and they haven't really had their proper 1st year. They haven't got to mix with people properly. They haven't got to make new friends. So they're still on that kind of the big fish in the little school. They've left, but then they don't have their friends around them as often. And then the like anxiety, and they're just pumped up that there's a bigger fear of going to 1st year into school, and that's affecting them. And even to the point, there was a woman on saying that her kids don't want to go, or her child doesn't want to go to school because it's been so long since it's had a proper routine. Yeah. And I can see even with our teens, and we worked with a football group and we asked for feedback. And a lot of them were just saying it's something like weird. It was online classes, but like the feedback we got was either from the kid themselves, which was very limited to a yes or no, I feel like. But the parents were saying they look forward to having something new and a different type of discipline in their life. Because they need, they've, as you said, they're growing. They have so much energy to expend. Mm-hmm. And then the social aspect, I think, which would obviously affect people more mentally, I'd say we're going, like, obviously you'd kind of see it more, as we're going to see this impact people a lot further as we come out of the pandemic, I think. Because with the people have been anxious about actually just meeting up with people or going to sport, or just because they're not used to socializing for so long. Yes,
100%. And I think there's a book, Johann Hari, it's called Lost Connections by Johann Hari. And he discusses that this is pre-pandemic now, that people in solitary confinement get, I think, 90 minutes on the yard a day. And in England, there was more prisoners getting sunlight and out in nature, or whatever, not nature, but outside, getting more sunlight and getting more exposure outside than the majority of teens in the country. So say it's 90 minutes a day, or say 90 minutes to 2 hours a day that teens were used to getting pre-pandemic. Then during pandemic, what's that turned into? That's probably turned into kind of like not much at all. So now you've got, teens and adolescents and children, whatever it is, sitting inside all day. But what are they doing? They're probably on social media a lot more. That's probably increased, watching TV, isolating themselves, not talking to friends, not communicating, not connecting with people, not having that kind of freedom to meet up with people or whatever. So I do think that in years to come, and after this whole pandemic is hopefully over or controlled in some way or maintained, that I think a lot of children out there and teens are probably going to struggle in some ways to reconnect with people. And I think that's where kind of maybe like teachers and I think parents can maybe step in. And there's loads of good, well, not loads, but there is, if you go to jigsaw.ie, there's some online kind of courses that teachers and parents can do about kind of like how to manage or how to control kind of what's going on with teens and with young people or whatever, But I think, definitely teachers will play a role in the promotion of mental health among students. And they can also discuss well-being and how important it is. So I think when children go back to school, I think if teachers kind of fill that role of maybe educating, I know it's not their role specifically or whatever, but if they even educate themselves, if anyone is listening to this and they can educate themselves, or even parents can educate themselves on the mental health and well-being of their children and students, I think that could play a huge role.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there a little bit. I know teachers aren't qualified for it, but it could be something like you've done talks in schools, which we didn't have stuff like that when we were in school.
Yeah.
I remember getting guest speakers in and they talk about different things, but no one ever spoke about mental health. It wasn't as, you didn't really speak about it back then, like all them, 20 odd years ago. But that could be like something that like schools should probably look at, or the school board should look at, as putting in like monthly or kind of quarterly mental health talks and checks, and because it is something that kids need to. And I don't know from your own experience, but just from kind of what you hear, is that it would be easier to probably get stuff from girls, but boys probably won't want to talk as much, and having that kind of element. But would you have found that, or like from when you did your talks, would you find that if you did a Q&A, you'd get more girls asking questions or boys, or am I completely off the radar there?
I think years ago, I think it is changing. I think it is changing. Definitely years ago, I think we would have had that. But look, you gotta know your audience. You gotta know what we've been conditioned to probably think for years, that, being told kind of in our generation, we were probably told that, only girls cry and guys can't be weak, and you need to toughen up and you need to be strong. You need to be all of these things. And, it was nearly like, an insult nearly to your family or your family name or whatever like that. Is like, some parents kind of live through their children or whatever. It's like, my child is strong, and, my Stephen is strong, and look at him playing football. And it was all, it was a lot of, I think, pressure on men, younger men in our generation kind of growing up, to be strong, to be tough, to be the good at things or whatever, it was nearly like a pride thing for a family name. But now I think times are changing. I definitely am going to schools now and seeing men, young men and teens, being very more open with their feelings and emotions after talks. More men than women would actually hit me up and they'd send me messages and talk about things I discussed. I definitely see it changing, definitely changing. I think that is all down to maybe in the last 5, 6, 7 years, whatever, since there's more men like Brezzy and kind of Blind Boy from the Rubber Bandits, more people being open about their mental health, sharing their own stories and struggles and whatnot. And it's kind of got into the mainstream now, where it's kind of nearly become acceptable for men to open up. Yes, 8 out of 10 people who take their lives in this country are men. So you could look at that statistic and say, well, why is that happening? So I do believe men are getting better at opening up, but I also know where that kind of concept is coming from, that men don't open up as much as women or whatever. But I do believe it is getting better, and I think the more we have discussions like this, and the more I talk in schools, and the more men are standing up and making it acceptable I think it will continue to change.
And I 100% agree, and I do believe that obviously this whole kind of stoic manliness, and like, look, manliness is a cool thing to have, but to be able to share when you're feeling down or you're having a bad time with someone is also stoic, because you're strong enough and strong enough to be able to share that you're not feeling good about yourself, rather than trying to bottle it up. And no, it's good to hear that that's the actual, because from my perception, but then I would have grown up in that kind of era, is that like it would be hard to get something from a bloke, as in to start opening up and start telling you that, listen, I don't actually feel good, and I always feel down, and I'm not happy with myself. And as you said, 8 out of 10.
Yes.
So, yeah. So like, obviously that's huge to be able to kind of get a generation talking, yes, and helping them do something. And it's something that we've looked at every year. We do a meetup with all our teens. Now we do a mix. We do men and girls, boys and girls together. And we just sit down and we talk to them about what they want to do, and that it's okay to have different goals, and it's okay to want this, and it's okay. Now we never, I'm not a counselor, so I never talk about emotions, but I think it's good that they have outlets that aren't just sports. And if they are in a sport, even like, I suppose, sport more like Gaelic and rugby and football, they should have stuff on mental health for kids to be able to talk. Because, like, you mightn't want to say it to your parents. You mightn't want to talk to your mum and dad about something that's going on in school. But you might talk to your coach, or even like if they bring it to a coach, then there's like, well, we want you to call Niall Munnelly because he's the guy you talk to, and you've done a talk with the GA club, and they know your name, they know your face, they know it's going to be confidential. I suppose more awareness that it is, like, there's people out there that will help you if you need it.
Yeah, and I think like in the last few years, it's become so acceptable that people are becoming more approachable about it. I think years ago when we were growing up, you didn't feel comfortable approaching anybody about it because, men were men, and kind of like you felt that they needed to be strong and they needed to be kind of like, not weak or whatever like that. So the perception, I think, has changed, and I think it's becoming more acceptable. So I think young teens and adolescents and stuff, young men are starting to kind of reach out because they see it as being more acceptable, and people are becoming more approachable. Like, the more men that are talking about these, and look, I do agree. I think if we start to talk about it in schools and we start to kind of educate the younger generation, then the generation after that will be even more acceptable, and kind of they'll be conditioned in a different way that it is okay to open up, it is okay to talk. I often ask that question to teens when I'm in schools, and I said, well, what is the problem about opening up? And people do suggest, oh, it's weak and I'll feel like I'll be slagged and abused or whatever. And I said, okay, let me get this straight then. So you say that somebody who's willing to stand up, be vulnerable enough to open up about their own struggles, what does that seem like to you? And they say, oh, strength and courage. So, well, where's weakness in that? Well, there is none. And you see all their minds kind of just changing and saying, well, hang on, where is this kind of, like, how did weakness get attached to being vulnerable and open up? Surely that's a strength, that's a sign of strength and courage, that you're so vulnerable that you're opening up without, the ramifications of what people are going to think of you. That's surely strength and courage to me. That I wouldn't deem that as weakness at all. But I think it's just a generational thing that, in years to come, I think the next generation and the ones to follow will have a different perception of opening up. It is changing 100%.
I think with people that would be afraid to stand up is they're afraid of getting, I suppose, a backlash from peers, as in like a kind of end up being a bullying situation. Like, right, I get, like, if I did something, no matter what I do, whether it's good, bad, or different, my mates will eventually turn it into a slag because they're my mates, my close circle of friends. And that's banter, and like, there's never any maliciousness in it. But what I mean, like, if someone stands up and says something and then there's a bullying situation, as in like, no, soft boy, or, walking down the corridor in school. And I only got this, I was on a call there 2 weeks ago, And it was about someone who were pretty much, if you're slagging off someone, you're kind of resenting that they did something that you're not willing to do.
Yeah, you're mirroring back, you're reflecting back to them.
Yeah. And
insecurities.
it was just a great way the guy spoke about it. He goes, when you are, like, so if someone stood up, like a teen stood up and said, listen, I'm really feeling down myself. They had strength to stand up and the courage to tell everyone in the room how they're feeling, and then someone tried to slag them off. That's like to educate the person that stood up and go, they're only saying that because they don't have the courage to do what you're doing. So they're showing their true weaknesses, you're showing your true strength. And I kind of knew it, but I never really understood it until it was explained to me, is that when you resent someone or you look down on someone, it's just because there's something about that person that you want to be and you can't be. Because there's something holding you.
Often that is the case. So they mirror kind of something in us that we miss or we're not confident about, or our own insecurities. Because, you know, say the two of us meet and then I see you're successful in the gym and everything's going okay for you. For me, I'm like, okay, we're similar ages, we started similar times, all this kind of stuff. So that could mirror my own insecurities of, well, hang on, like I should have what he has. Why don't I? And that could make me feel worse about myself. Well, about my own decisions in life. Well, why amn't I where Stephen is? Why didn't I make good decisions like Stephen? So often it can mirror and reflect our own insecurities. And what happens through that is projection. We start to project our own insecurities or whatever, and that's all it is. And that's all what most of the time bullying is or whatever it is. It's just people projecting how they really feel on the inside. So like if you say in that case where the person stands up and says something and somebody slags them, whatever, a lot of the times that is just projection of how maybe insecure one other person feels. And in a time where we've been isolated for a year and a lot of people have been struggling, I think for the next few years, it is so important for us all to lift each other up now. Like 100% from here on in is to just lift each other up, to motivate each other, to inspire each other, to put your hand down, to pick somebody up. Like, I think that's going to be huge for the next few years, to reach out and to help people.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And then if you were to take the last 12 months, and this is something obviously we started talking about before we started the podcast, is how, sorry, let me say it again. How can we change the last 12 months in the mindset of a teen or for anyone? As in, like, I looked at how, like, everyone said, oh, your gym's closed. I've taken a lot of positives out of the last 12 months for my business. Mm-hmm. And we're not in an ideal situation.
Yeah.
But you can either sit there and go, okay, I'm going to wait till someone comes and fixes everything for me, or how am I going to use this to my advantage? And that's what I've done with the company for the last 12 months. But for teens, or even people in general, I suppose, for everyone, what would be your advice to switch again, take the positives out of the last 12 months?
Well, that's a complex question, because to take the positive out.
As in, so we all had negative. Sorry, I think I'm not explaining it correctly. Everyone's looking at the pandemic as a horrible thing.
Yeah.
Well, what good things happened in that time? Like, positive things for us was I got to sit back and really look at the company and redevelop a lot of things. I got to get married. I got to have a kid. Susan had a baby. I didn't have a baby. Giles had to make sure I get that. But for even teens, it's like, as I explained to my teens, is that you've got to spend 6 weeks purely working on Olympic lifting and technique. So when you come back to the gym, you're going to be better at Olympic lifting.
Yeah.
Take the small positives and then just focus on it. When you take all your small positives, it turns into be a big kind of pot of positivity of good things that happened in a pandemic. But yeah, that's kind of like where would, for you, how would you kind of I think I'm ruining this question, to be honest.
No. I think I know what you're saying. It's just that when I was asked that question, I was like, positives. Like I'm just kind of thinking like for me to reflect back over the last year with thousands of people dying and infected and kind of people losing loved ones and stuff like that. I just took it as, well, it's hard to try to put a positive spin on what happened, but I understand what you're saying. Individually, kind of what can we take, kind of going forward or whatever. I think what you said is you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I think a lot of people going forward will probably come to the realization of how important it is, how important connections are, how important family is, how important close friends are, how important kind of like life is, and to understand that kind of like, something like this might happen again. Like how do we kind of like, build our own confidence, self-esteem, resilience, any of that kind of stuff in case it does happen again, whatever. But I think it all boils down to the one big positive, I think, if somebody can take going forward, would be how important connections are, how important it is for humans as a human being is to have good company around, to have love, to have care. And maybe for some people it would be to spend more time with their family. I think what a lot of people probably learned throughout the pandemic was how stressed they were in life and in work. And like working, 12, 14, 16-hour days, not spending time with family, friends, burnt out, exhausted, whatever it may be. So I think going forward, a lot of people may be kind of coming to terms with, okay, balance. I think the one huge word throughout the pandemic going forward would be, can you structure a bit more balance in your life with work, personal and professional life? And that boils down to what you talked about: family, friends, children, whatever it may be. Can you create more balance in your life? And maybe the pandemic, highlighted that for some people, that they had no balance. They were probably not spending enough time at home, not connecting with their partners, and, probably, getting consumed by things that really didn't matter. In the grand scheme of things, I think the pandemic stripped everything down to the bare minimum. Like, you're living in your house with your family, you're alone or whatever it may be. It stripped us all of freedom. It stripped us all of safety, security, all of that. So when everything is stripped, it humbles you to a point where you realize, okay, well, what is important in my life now?
I totally. Looking back at all those things, as you said, like people that were working or probably stressed out about the smallest things in life are now kind of like, well, that's not really important, like, because you got to step away from a lot of stuff. I think that's a really good point and a way to look at it. I also believe that for teens, it can be used as to build, like they've like you touched on it, is they've had to build resilience because they've gone back to school, they've been shut down, they've gone back to sports, they've been shut down. And a lot of teens, I know some mightn't have taken it as well, but I think a lot of teens can look at this when they come out of it, when it's all back to normal, is that they've went through a year, and probably be a year and a half, 2 years by the end of it all, where they had to be resilient. Mm-hmm. They had this, like, for guys that didn't get their leaving cert or like got their junior cert cancelled, all that stuff, they've had to process that. They didn't get their first year in college, they've had to go online. They've all had to process and deal with that. And I think the greater side of it would be people will come out stronger mentally, hopefully. That's what I would like to see. I know it probably won't. I thought a lot of people are going to be struggling a fair bit, like we've talked about. But I think the resilience aspect of it is, if we can turn it around from being a negative to teach them that you got through a year and you are stronger for it, rather than you got through a year and you were weaker for it. That kind of mindset, I suppose, would be something I would like to kind of tell my teens and my youths when I work with them, is then, like, you did something that a lot of other people at your age will never have to experience. Yeah. And we can take that to be a positive. Even though you probably hated it, you can take it to be a positive. It's a choice.
Yeah, like when it comes to resilience, there's like Dr. Kenneth Ginsberg, a child pediatrician and human development expert, proposed 7 integral and interrelated components that make up being resilient. which is competence, confidence, connection, character, and contribution. Coping and control. So he also wrote a book called Building Resilience in Children and Teens, Giving Kids Roots and Wings. So even if we were to kind of look at kind of like them 7 things, them 7 integral parts of resilience, you look at competence. That's the ability to know how to handle stressful situations effectively. So that's going to be something for teens to be able to develop in the future, and to probably develop maybe throughout the pandemic, and for some to probably lack that development, you know. So that'd be a big one going forward. And confidence is the belief in one's own ability, and is also rooted in competence as well. So I think a lot of people probably suffered a lot with confidence throughout the pandemic, not being able to interact or whatever. So I think going forward, we'll be trying to build more confidence in teens. Connections, children with close ties to friends and family and community are likely to have stronger sense of security and sense of belonging. So one thing the pandemic probably took away from people was all of that. So I think coming out, if they want a positive kind of to build resilience in some way outside or post-pandemic, would be to reconnect with friends, family, community, get involved and get that sense of belonging back again. Character with children, strong sense of self-worth and confidence again. Values stuff, so that's all part of your character. That can be kind of like built on as well. Contribution, if kids can experience contributing to the world, that can empower them and help them feel like they've got a place in the world. So they feel like they're contributing. So whether it's like in a team, or whether it's training in your gym, or whether it's kind of contributing in some way. So I think getting back to kind of contributing, because of probably like being out for a year of feeling like they haven't contributed to much. So they might have that kind of like sense of not belonging to much. And then coping again would be children who have a wide skill of coping, social skills, are able to cope more efficiently and better prepared to overcome life's challenges. So that's another big one. I think that's probably one of the most important, is coping strategies and mechanisms, like learning them for future situations and scenarios that might come up like this. And the last one then is control, when we kind of realize that all of our decisions and actions are in our control. I think that can be hugely empowering for gaining resilience going forward in the future, because and that is a huge part of resilience, is like sometimes when we lack resilience, we don't think we have control over our decisions or our actions. But when we find out we actually do, it can be empowering for us to build resilience going forward.
Yeah, I think the coping one, I think, is a big one. And like you said, a lot of people will probably have to be shown or kind of educated on coping, because some people would be stronger than mentally than others. But those was 7 principles there, was there?
Yeah, 7, yeah.
So
7 C's.
The 7 C's, like they're definitely things that, again, like what you're doing now, and like working with schools and educating kids and teens on like it's firstly it's okay to not feel good, but we can help you develop a resilience to help you process it and kind of understand how you're feeling. Because I suppose for a teenager, firstly, before the pandemic, being a teenager was all over the place. I remember being like kind of grumpy and like just an absolute nightmare at home, but then you put me on a basketball court and I was happy-go-lucky because it was an environment where I loved to be. But no one was telling me that me being at home, being a grumpy, was getting me nowhere. Like, you know what I mean? But now, adding a pandemic into it, I suppose all their hormones, everything else is just, I suppose you're getting hit every way from Sunday. And for some, if I say for a lot of teens, they can't, the processing aspect is probably, it can be, I suppose, very overwhelming for them.
It is. Well, look, you think about multiple lockdowns. So the pandemic has certainly increased anxiety and depression in this country without a shadow of a doubt. But I think, and I don't want to put pressure on parents or teachers or whatever, but I do think they, like, parents and teachers, we can talk about mindfulness and we can talk about kind of taking care of ourselves and self-care and resilience, whatever. But again, like it's all going to boil down to the parents and teachers actually showing them what it is and teaching them what it is to cope and resilience, and kind of talk about anxiety and talk about depression and talk about opening up and give them permission to open up in this space to talk and to share their feelings, whatever. But that's all going to, like, you got to think about when you are younger, you know, you look up to a lot of people. You would have probably looked up to your basketball coach. You probably would have looked up to your parents. You would have looked up to a couple of teachers or whatever. And they're the things, and they're the people, that I think the teens are going to look up to and look for help and look for guidance. And I think it's the more educated parents and we'll say adults and teachers become around mindfulness and self-care and resilience and coping mechanisms, and they can help to teach and to kind of, you know, that whole monkey see, monkey do kind of thing, whatever, you know. So if you see your parent, you see your teacher practicing mindfulness or self-care or taking care of themselves, it's not going to be long before you start copying them or understand it yourself. Yeah. So I think if parents want to help, and teachers want to help, I think, is to educate themselves as much as possible, and to just to give teens permission to kind of open up and to talk about what they're struggling with. I think that's a good place to start. Again, not even going into kind of like in schools, okay, let's get one class a week or one class a month to talk about this. That's definitely 100% something that could benefit the whole country. But will it happen? I don't think the money and resources will be pushed that direction, but which is a shame. But then it's down to other people like myself and other people are more vocal about it to keep putting up content to help, you know, teens, and to help teachers and parents understand how to cope, what is resilience, how to improve resilience, and you know, how to talk openly. Like a lot of people, Stephen, you got to remember, a lot of people don't have the language around mental health. They don't understand. You know, do you ever go to a funeral, right? And people are all standing around and everyone's afraid to go up and shake, even though it's your friend that could have had somebody, their parent pass or whatever like that is. There's still like people will cling together and like, oh, you go up, no, you go up. And there's this kind of like, someone just go up and shake their hand. And when you go up, it's kind of like, oh, sorry for your loss. And you try to get out of there as quick as possible. It's this awful
that's me, 100%.
Yeah. But I think it's the same because we don't have the language around that. We don't have the language around kind of what to go up and say or do, whatever. And I think it's the same if we were to look at it in a mental health aspect, whatever. I think a lot of people just don't understand what to say. So a friend opens up and to say, hey, I'm struggling, can you help? And I just think a lot of people, you know, just don't understand. They're like, oh, they kind of panic, or they have to Google something, or they just ignore the person. And then the person feels that sent a message or reached out feels like, oh, I'm being ignored. They don't like me. They don't love me. But I don't think it's a matter of that. I think a lot of people love and care for you more than you think. But I just don't know if people have the language around it. And after, you know, they feel confident enough, you know, if somebody says, hey, I feel like taking my own life, like, what do you do? And I don't think people understand what to do. And I think the more we discuss this and the more teachers and parents and government get on board with all of this, it'll become acceptable and everyone will just know what to do.
Yeah, like that's like, even though it was a question that was put in my head, one of our coaches was driving home there, I think it was January, and he was going over the bridge just as you leave Bray, and he seen a guy standing on the bridge just on his own. This is about 10:30 at night, 11 o'clock. And he said there was something about him, he felt wrong. So he went down and went around the roundabout, came back up, and he seen him climbing, he was standing nearly on top of it. And he started beeping the horn and got him down. Like, the guy was about to jump off the bridge. It's like having it. And he just kept talking to him. Now, Dave, not Dave Lacey, our new coach Dave, he's done a lot of stuff with suicide prevention, and he's done a lot, like he understands a lot of that. Like he kind of looked into it, and I kind of studied it a little bit. And he got the guy down. The guards eventually came, and it turns out he was having a really bad time with his family and his kids. And then the next day he went to the Garda stations asking for more. Obviously the guards couldn't give him any more information, but he said he went home, and like they made sure he got home okay and all that. But like, there is, like, he was able to deal with that. And then I questioned myself, would I have turned around And I don't know if I don't know if I would or wouldn't. I honestly couldn't answer, and that kind of annoyed me. Seeing that, is that if I had driven past that and seen that guy on the bridge, would I have turned around to go back and stop, like pretty much prevented him from jumping?
Are you saying that because you kind of would have feared that you wouldn't have had the right things to say to somebody in that situation? And you might have made it worse, or you might have been at fault, or is that?
Yeah, like something, or even to the point it was like, that's just a guy on a bridge. I wouldn't have registered with me that that could be something more than a guy on a bridge. A bit of both.
Yes.
But I've thought of it a few times, and it's like, would I have done what they've done? And because he's more aware of things.
Well, sorry, yeah, no, sorry to cut across you. That just kind of proves what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
He was educated and he was aware of what to do. So he understood, and he was confident enough to understand kind of like what this person needs. And often when people are struggling, they don't need everyone to fix. They don't need another 100 suggestions on what they should do in life. They've already thought about this for days, weeks, months, years of, suggestions and stuff. They just need someone to listen. They just need someone to be there. Like he probably drove up, got out and just said, hey, just talk to me for a second. And all he done was just listen. Let the guy talk. Let whoever it is, the person just talk. Just let them, and just be compassionate. Just show interest. And just like Carl Rogers, basic human kind of, love and care. It's just to be there and just to listen. And that's quite often what people just need, is just somebody to listen. They don't need, the situation could have changed if he drove up and went, oh, what are you doing? Oh, get down off that, and kind of went at it as, what are you doing? And, come here, and this is what you should do, and that's what you should do. And they don't need stuff like that. They need just someone to listen, just someone to sit down and kind of say, just tell me what's going on. Is everything okay? And that's what people, I think, confuse with mental health. When somebody hears about, say, somebody wanting to take their own lives or struggling with anxiety or depression, they feel like they need to fix. They feel like they need to have all the answers. You do not need to fix. You do not need to have all the answers. You just need to listen.
And I think that like, it's like, as you said, it like that person has been thinking about this for days. It's been in their brain. But when you internalize, so when you verbalize something, it's better because you can process it better. And it's like when you write stuff down, like brain dump, you can get rid of a lot of stress. And it was even something that I did. It was yesterday. I had to do a 20-minute hot pen, it's called. And you have to start writing. You get given a sentence, and then you just have to continue on. You can end up writing, I don't know what I'm writing. But you're not allowed to stop writing for 20 minutes. And the reason behind it is that after 10 minutes, your conscious brain gets tired and can't really work anymore. So real stuff starts coming out. And it was amazing when I read back what I wrote in 20 minutes. Firstly, my wrist was a bit. But I got to the point where I started getting very deep into me, more so than, well, this is what I'm going to do at the gym, and this is what I'd like to do with my family, and this is who I want to connect with again. Then it was getting more, because when you start running out of all of the external factors, you start talking more about yourself and what you dislike and what you do like and what you should do for yourself. And it was quite an interesting way to do. I've done a brain dump before, but you were taught like the drill was you had to write for 20 minutes. You weren't allowed to stop, no matter what. You just can't take your, and you'll start writing a lot. You'll write an awful lot of like just random stuff, but you will get to the core of a few things that you generally aren't dealing with. And once you get them on paper, then you feel, and in all fairness, my head felt so much lighter when I was done. It was crazy. It was a cool little drill that we did. It was quite interesting.
It's a good tool to have, and I think we done that in college. I think our first year in college, I think we done something similar to that. I think we were given half an hour, and And I was just kind of writing and kind of, getting from the conscious of what to the unconscious, like what's back there, like what is really the issue and problem. Like once all you get through all the, oh, he said and she said this and I meant work or whatever like that is, you get down, I guarantee yours kind of nearly flowed. It kind of just went, all this kind of like surface level stuff that's kind of going on. And she said this, and then like I just, whatever is kind of going on. And then I started to kind of get into the real kind of like what you're really feeling about yourself. And that's a lot people don't give themselves the opportunity to really tap into that. And that's why people get consumed by social media, they get consumed by not having boundaries, they get consumed with comparison, they get consumed by all of this, because it's all this superficial surface level kind of stuff or whatever, instead of actually getting deep inside and go, well, why am I comparing my life to Floyd Mayweather, who's got 17 cars and he's a professional boxer? Or why am I comparing myself to somebody in the fitness industry? Or why am I comparing myself to somebody who's got nice bum and boobs and abs and whatnot? Like, why? Like, what is it all about? Because that's all surface level stuff. That's all kind of, that's what, social media and stuff is built on, and kind of is people's insecurities. And that's all surface level, but getting into why you feel insecure. Why are you buying this thing at 12 o'clock at night, this 99 euro thing on TV that's going to change your life? And, it's asking yourself and getting in. I think when you kept writing for 10, 15, 20 minutes, you start getting into the whys.
Yeah.
Why were you really ticked? Was it because, your partner gave out to you? Was it really that, some gym up the road done whatever? Was it really? Or like, what's the why? And there's when you start going back and doing that work, and that's what therapy is. What you've done is kind of like a style of therapy, a way of kind of being able to kind of like an introspection of yourself, whatever. But in therapy, we would ask them questions. Honestly, in therapy, you literally see light bulbs going off, pennies dropping, the whole lot. When you just ask questions and you get beyond the mask, and then all of a sudden it's just the answer, and it's like, oh, that's why I was feeling this. This is why. And we don't, I think, give ourselves enough opportunity to investigate why we really feel the way we feel about certain things, and then we become more susceptible to comparison, mental health issues, anxiety, depression, all of that, but I don't know. I feel like I've gone on a ramble there. I don't even know if you were asking.
Good. No, it's good. I prefer that. Right. So I got one more question, because this is going to go on, this podcast specifically will obviously, it's going to go on our website, but it's going to go on our youth's social media, because we want to kind of let our teens, and even some of our kids, if they want to listen to it, we give them the option of it. But for, let's say someone is watching this, they're a teenager, they're not feeling great about themselves at the moment, or the last 12 months, and just it's hit them hard.
Yeah.
What would be a piece of advice you'd give them to do to help them out?
Well, first off, I'd probably start to watch out. I'd probably kind of like get them to sit with themselves for a while and ask themselves some questions like, has my anxiety increased since COVID or whatever? Am I feeling more irritable? Are my thoughts getting more irrational? Has there been a change in habit? A change in appetite or sleeping? Are you finding it hard to fall asleep and stay asleep? Are you being forgetful or brain fog? And start to ask yourself some of these questions to see if these increased since the pandemic has started. And if so, whatever, maybe being vocal and maybe being able to speak up to your parents, family member, friends, coaches, teachers, whatever it may be, and kind of just let them know that you're feeling an increase in all of the list, because they are very important to be aware of. So if they've increased since COVID, whatever. But my advice then, like to younger or teens or whatever like that, would be stay connected. Don't disconnect from friends. Stay connected as much as possible. So ring friends, Zoom friends, connect with friends, set up a WhatsApp with friends. And as soon as the restrictions adhere to the government guidelines and you're able to meet outside, meet friends. Don't stay inside. Limit social media usage. Social media usage has gone up I think I was going to butcher with a percentage here, but it's gone up a lot because people are just sitting inside. So again, when we go back to the comparison thing, we go back to, mental health issues, there's a correlation between social media use and bad mental health. The higher social media use, the higher people are at risk of increased, anxiety and depression. So again, limit your time on social media. Find other things to do besides social media. Go for a walk, read a book, distract yourself, try to be creative, whatever it may be. Make time for self-care. That could be just going for a walk, a 5K walk in the evening. Maintain sleeping patterns. Even if you've nothing to get up for the next day, don't get into 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, sleep for 2 hours and have to get up for school. Get back to your old kind of sleeping patterns and try to maintain them. That can be huge. So make out goals, make out daily goals if you can, small, very small goals. So write them out, find an accountability buddy. Okay, so find somebody, if you're making goals and someone has similar goals, say people in your gym, Stephen or whatever, they go to the gym together. It's like find an accountability buddy, somebody in that class or community that they can say, hey, did you do the workout Stephen put up today? Or hey, did you do this? Or did you do that? And no, I didn't do it. Okay, do you want to kind of do it together? Or you do it and I'll do it separate and we'll text each other afterwards with a score or a time or whatever it may be. Is find an accountability buddy. Focus on the journey, not the results. Would be a big one. I think in the last year, a lot of people's results, whether it's coming through physical or like eating habits or whatever it may be, things have kind of gone maybe array a little. So just don't focus on kind of like, I've missed out on a lot. Kind of focus on the journey of, okay, where can we kind of start to rebuild? Celebrate the small successes and small wins, and show yourself compassion. A bit of self-compassion. There's a lot of people out there who are really compassionate towards everyone else, but then they lack it for themselves. So show yourself that bit of compassion. Whether it's you're after eating something, or you're after putting on a little bit of weight, or you're not as strong as you used to be, or you can't walk as far as you used to, whatever it is, just show yourself that bit of compassion. It's okay. Tomorrow's another day, as cliche as it sounds.
No, that's all great. And if anyone is watching this, we'll have Niall's Instagram handle in the links below. And again, I'm sure you can always reach out to Niall if you need. And then if you've taken anything positive from this, share with someone that you feel that might need it, because again, as Niall said, is if you stand up and be heard, you're being strong and courageous, you're not showing weakness. So it's a good thing to do. Guys, firstly, Niall, thanks for being on the show. If anyone, we're going to put all the links to Niall's social media and website and stuff. We're going to put that all in the comments, so you can go and check from him and check out what he's doing and how he's helping people. And obviously give us a like and subscribe to the show, and we will see you all on the next one.
You're listening to the Live, Live, Play podcast.